Hi, today we're going to be learning how to calculate the surface area and volume of rectangular pyramids. Alright, so just like with square pyramids, let's go ahead and start off with surface area and label all 5 sides of our pyramid. So first I had noticed that I have this bottom side. So we're going to start off with bottom. I also noticed that I have this front triangle. If I have a front, I also have a back triangle. So we're going to do front and then back. All right, and then the last 2 sides are here on the right and then the left side. So we're just going to call them side and side. Now the main difference between a square pyramid and a rectangular pyramid is notice that these dimensions on the bottom are not the same, which means that the triangles in the front and the back are going to be different than the triangles on each of our 2 sides, left and right. So let's go ahead and try solving for them. All right, so we're going to start with the bottom. I noticed that we have a rectangle for the bottom, so we're just going to do base times height. So that's 12 times 8, and that gets me 96. Let's do the area of this front triangle. So notice that the base of this front triangle is going to be 12, and then I want to multiply it by the height or the slant height of this triangle right here. And that arrow is pointing to 10. So in our formula, we're going to do 1/2 times base 12 times height 10. And that's going to get me 60. If the area is 60 for the front, that means it's also 60 for the back triangle. Okay, the last side that we have is on the right and the left. So for this triangle, notice that the base and the height are completely different from the front. The base of this triangle is 8 and the height of the triangle is 11. So if I plug that in, 1/2 times base 8 times height 11, that's going to get me 44. So notice that the 2 triangle areas are different. If this side is 44, that means our other side is also going to be 44. So I'm just going to write that in, and then we're going to add up all 5 sides. So let's add 96 plus 60 plus 60 plus 44 plus 44. All of that gets me a total of 304, and our units are meters squared. And that's surface area. Now let's break down what we just did. So if you were to look up surface area of a rectangular pyramid, you would see a really long and complicated formula on Google or in your textbook. So we're going to go ahead and create a different formula, one that's a little bit easier to use. Let's go ahead and start off by labeling our dimensions. So for the rectangular base down here, I'm just going to label this my length of the rectangle, and this is going to be called the width of the rectangle. All right, so the first thing that we started off by doing was just multiplying length times width for the bottom. So I'm going to start off my formula by writing this in, length times width. And we added that to this stuff over here. So what did we do here? Well, for the front, we took the length and we multiplied it by this height of the triangle here. And we're going to call this the slant height. All right, so this is our slant height 1 of the pyramid. So over here, we did 1/2 times the length, right, times slant height 1. And you'll see why we labeled this S1. And we did this 2 times. So in the formula, I'm going to go ahead and write 2 times the area of the front triangle. So we did 1/2 times length times S1. All right, and then again, we added that to this stuff down here. Now for this, what did we do? Well, we took the width, and this time we multiplied it by the height of this triangle, another slant height. So we're going to call this S2. So we did 1/2 times width times S2. And again, we did this 2 times. So to add on, we're going to do 2 times what we did here. 1/2 times width times S2. Now let's condense everything. So L times W is just going to say LW plus, notice that if I multiply 2 times 1/2, well, what happens is this just cancels out. And all I'm left with is L times S1. So I'm just going to write exactly that. L times S1 plus, again, this cancels out, and all we're left with is W times S2. W, S2. And there's our simplified formula per surface area of a rectangular pyramid. Okay, moving on to the volume. So for volume, just like a square pyramid, we're going to take 1/3. We're going to multiply it by the bottom or the base, which is going to be 96. And then we want to multiply it by the height of the pyramid or however many layers there are. In this case, notice that it's pointing to 9.2. So we're multiplying by 9.2. All of this multiply gets me to 94.4, and this is meters cubed. And that's our volume. So the formula for volume is going to start out the same way. So we start out with 1/3, and then we want to multiply it by the area of the base, capital B, and then times that by the height of the pyramid. Remember, here is the height, the 9.2. But if I want to rewrite this, the area of the base, we used length times width to find the area of that rectangle. So I'm just going to go ahead and replace this with length times width, and then finally multiply it by our height. And this is the volume for a rectangular pyramid. All right, let's try applying our formulas to this rectangular pyramid here. So we're going to start off with labeling our sides again. So I notice I have this bottom side. We also have the front and back. And we have these two sides on the left and the right. So side and side. Let's start with this bottom rectangle side. So for the rectangle, I'm just going to do 19 times 16. 19 times 16 is going to get me a total of 304. For the front triangle, we're going to do 1/2 times the base of the triangle, which is 19, times the height of the triangle, which is this slanted height right here. That's going to be 17. All of this multiplied gets me 161.5. The front is 161.5. That means the back is as well. And then our last two triangular sides. So for this one, we're going to do 1/2 times the base of this triangle, which is 16, times the height of the triangle, which is going to be this slanted part here. That's 18. All of this multiplied is going to get me 144. And the other side is the same thing as well. Let's add up all 5 sides, and we get a total of 915, and it's going to be inches squared. So that's the surface area. Now let's try seeing if this surface area formula works. So I'm going to start by labeling all of my dimensions. So remember, this was the length of our rectangle, this was the width. This slanted part right here is going to be our S1, and this other slanted side is going to be our S2. If I plug this into the formula, we're going to start with length times width, so 19 times 16, plus length times S1, that's going to be 19 times 17, and then finally width times S2, so that's going to be 16 times 18. All right, now let's simplify everything. So 19 times 16 is going to get me 304, plus 19 times 17 is going to get me 323, and then 16 times 18 is going to get me 288. If I add all of these together, that's going to get me 915 inches squared as well. So the same surface area. All right, now let's move on to volume. So for the volume, we're going to start with 1/3 times the area of the base or the bottom, 304, and then times that by however many layers there are, or the height, which in this case is 15.3. So 15.3. All of this multiplied is going to get me 1,550.4 inches cubed. So that's the volume. If I want to try applying this formula, we're going to do 1/3 times length, which is 19, times the width, which is 16. And then remember, the height of the pyramid is going to be this right here. So here's our height. I'm going to multiply our height, 15.3. All of this multiplied is going to get me the same thing, 1550.4 inches cubed. And that's how you solve for the surface area and volume of rectangular pyramids. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment with any questions or topics you'd like to see next. Bye!